Hello and welcome to this tutorial. We're going to build this octopus tentacle and animate it, and actually we're going to end up building the whole octopus but with only 4 tentacles. So if you've downloaded the file that was at the tutorial site, it should be a single tentacle build start spline, I believe. You should have a single spline in your viewport. So let's get started. I'm going to explain why I'm building this tentacle this way, and it will become obvious later. But for now, let's just stay with me. So first, we need to get a cloner from Mograph. Cloner, put it in the viewport, and I'm going to stick it under this null. And we're going to stick this spline right in there, and you should immediately get 3 splines. So I'm going to use these exact settings so that your tentacle will be the same as mine, so it won't get too confusing. So let's just follow these things. We're going to do 35 count. Okay, I'll keep that in the viewport. A lot of splines, but the reason is, well, you'll see to animate this tentacle. In the position Y right here, we're going to put in minus 92.2. Okay, and that's going to put it down there. And then we want to go to this is the most important part of this. The step mode is cumulative. And that's right in here, and right now it's set to single value, which is the default in the cloner. But let's put it to cumulative, and so nothing really changed yet. But if we go down to our step size and put in 90%, you're going to see that these splines suddenly jump together, but they jump together in a way. Let me go into the front view here for a second. They jump together in a way that spaces them evenly and getting smaller. The space is getting smaller towards the bottom, and that's going to be very obvious why here in a few minutes, why that's important. So there's one thing that we still have to do, and that is we have to get these splines. The spacing is going down the way we want, but the size is still the same all the way down. So we're going to turn off the cloner settings, and we're going to turn on the Step Effector settings. So if you have your cloner selected, you go up to Mograph and Effectors and come down to Step. Okay, you see immediately what happened is the clones got larger at the bottom and small at the top, and that's not exactly what we want. So let's go in here and adjust the spline. Now, this is the spline setting in the Effector tab. In the parameter, we're going to leave this scale at 1, but in the Effector tab, we have this spline, and if you roll that open and pull this down a little bit, you can see show in separate window, and that's what we want to do, is pull that spline out so we have a separate window and we can work a little larger. Okay, so once we got this open, let's grab this point, and that is point Y. We're going to put in point 708, and that should pop it up there. That's what we want. And then while we're here, we're going to do tangent right X, which is down here, and that's 0.186. You don't have to put the 0 in front of it automatically. We'll do that. And then the tangent right Y right here is minus 0.264. Okay, and then we'll grab this point. Now you're going to see these change over here. You'll see these change, all right, but that's okay because we do need a 1 in point X. And then we need this to be, this is tangent left X, to be 0.068. 0.068. And then this left Y. And then in here, we need this point. When we have this selected, point Y needs to be 0. And you'll see that pops right down there, which is what we need. So when we have that selected, the point Y is 0. But if we go back up here and select this point, oops, I moved that slightly, 264, 186, okay, right here. move that slightly. And that little bit, it's not going to matter, but I'm trying to keep it. Anyway, so then we have back to our 0.708. Let's go ahead and close out our spline box. And there's one other adjustment. You see that these splines at the bottom, not quite as small as we'd like them. So what we want to do is go into our Step Effector, into the stay in this Effector tab, and you see there's a minimum maximum, and this is where we can further adjust these bottom splines. So if you pull this down, you can see it just goes to nothing. All right, so that's not exactly what we want, but maybe somewhere around, I think I figured it to be around minus 69%, and that gives us a nice shape to our tentacle. So let's click that off, and the last thing we need to do is let's hold our cloner down, or select our cloner and hold Option down, and we're going to go up into here, and we want to get a loft object, and immediately you see that we have this thing is fleshed out. So there's a couple of things we want to do. First off, we want to turn off this top cap. I think that's the one. Yeah, we don't need that. We're gonna, if we keep it, we have to get rid of it later anyway. And then let's go into our loft settings. Okay, so we can kind of, and here's something else I'm going to do. I'm going to turn on option or display lines. Okay, that's under display garage shading. All right, and so you can see right away we got a lot of lines, and we don't want that. So go into the loft, go into the object tab, and the mesh subdivision U, we want to put in 7. Mesh subdivision V, we want 2. And then isoperm sub is 10, and that's fine. And then these are the defaults checked, and we want to leave those. And basically, we have the beginning of our tentacle. So it doesn't look real great yet, and that's okay. I mean, this really isn't about the look of it, but we're going to keep that in mind. But if you hold, if you select your loft and hold down Option and click the subdivision surface object, okay, to smooth it, you can see that immediately. Let's turn this off for a second. You know, well, actually can't see much there either. But it certainly starts to look smoother and nicer, and that's what we want. So let's go back here. I am going to click on that subdivision surface and delete without children because I really don't want it in the scene right now. And so the next thing we're going to do is we want to set up our joints before we do anything with this tentacle. So how we're going to do that is, if you come up to the loft object, select it, and right-click, and come down here and go current state to object. What that's going to do is it's going to create a new object in our viewport, and it's going to leave this setup the way we had it, which is what we want. And so I'm going to come over here and I'm going to turn off this. I'm going to turn off my Step Effector, and I'm actually going to double click these stop lights to make sure that is not in the scene at all. Okay, and so the other thing, now we've got to pull this out. I want to get rid of that and just hit delete, and I want to keep this in that tentacle thing for now. And so what we have is basically the tentacle, but then we have this cap, and we had deleted that cap, but there is another cap, and it's down here at the bottom. And so what we want to do is, we don't want that right now. It's a separate piece, and we don't want that. We do want it to be connected. So let's go into point mode, and we're going to take both of these, and we're going to right click, come down and say connect objects and delete. And what that will do is connect those objects and then get rid of what was there. You can also do you just grayed out now connect objects, and that will leave those two pieces and create a new object connected, but we don't need that. So there's one other thing we want to do here, because we want to make the end of this not so squared off. We could look at it with the hypernerb, and it's okay, but there's still a problem. Something I forgot, and you're seeing that hypernerb is not smoothing that edge, even though we've connected it. Well, we've connected it, but there's one other thing that we have to do, and that is you have to optimize this, which means we've connected these two things together, but there's still actually a set of points for the cap and a set of points for the object. So with the in point mode, and make sure you click somewhere out here to make sure no points are selected, you're going to right click and you're going to come down to optimize. And as soon as we do that, it grabbed those points and stuck them together. So now there's only one point at these 5 places, okay? And now we've got the proper smoothing. But the end of the tentacle really still doesn't look so good. So we're going to do just a little bit of slicing and dicing here, and we can stay in point mode. I'm going to hit K for the knife tool, and I'm going to make sure it's in line mode. Then I'm going to take the knife tool. I'm in point, we're in knife tool, and I'm going to click on this point. I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to try to get about center on there. It's not crucial. So we got there, and we're going to come up there and cut that. Now we need to get rid of these extra 2 points and get this more even. So I think the easiest way is come in here and grab the stitch and sew, and we should be able to drag that to there and drag that one to there. And now we have nice 6 equal parts, which of course are triangles, but for this I think it's going to be okay. And so with that center point, we want to just drag that down. Okay. And now if I switch on my subdivision surface, I can grab that again and just pull that down a little more. And so we have a kind of a nice rounded end to the tentacle. So one last thing, let's do this. Let's deselect that point. Click here a couple times, make sure no points are selected, and then want to go down and just optimize one more time just to make sure that everything is connected properly. Okay, so let's get rid of this subdivision surface once again. I delete, right click, go down to delete without children. And what we want to do now is we need to go in here to our cloner object, and let's rename that tentacle so that's not confusing. Let's spell it right. Tentacle. I think that's right. And let's get out of point mode. And what we need to do now is go into edge mode and select our tentacle. And what we want to do is come down. If you hit U and L, that's going to give you the loop selection. And what we want to do is, it's a little tedious, we want to select every other edge loop. So I need this one, and as I'm touching those, because I have the loop tool, it's selecting the whole loop all the way around. Select this one, every other one. And you can move around in your viewport. You just have to go to option. It won't deselect it, and just now see I'm holding down option and pressing down on my middle mouse button so I can move this anywhere around. Then I go back to holding shift. You want to shift click these so you can keep selecting them. I'm going to hold my option, middle mouse button, shift click, shift click, shift click, option, middle mouse to get over here, shift click. And now I'm going to option and use my right key and drag it to get out a little farther. Okay, it's tedious. and I'm going to option and drag my, hold down the right click and drag it. Now middle mouse button to get it over and click, 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 and the top one. Okay, so should have all of those selected, every other one. And just for safety's sake, I'm going to go in here and grab this, and we're going to go over to selection and set selection. So if, like, we forget and we click away off of that, well, we don't have to go redo all that. You just double click this and it reselects them again. Okay? Okay, so let's create our joints with the tentacles selected and our edge loop selected. Going to hold down Shift, come up to Character, Conversion, and we want to use Selection to Joints. Okay, and so what that did is that created a joint at every edge loop that we had selected. The only thing is you can't really see them, probably because I have it filtered out. Okay, and so you still really can't see them. All you see are these little circles, all right, but they are right at the edge loops. And the reason we can't see them yet is because these joints have to all be put into a hierarchy. And I don't know why Cinema brings them in this way, but it does. Anyway, so let's find our base joint, and it looks like 0 is going to be our base joint. And so what we want to do is, and this is tedious, so I'm going to show you a few of them, and then I'm going to cut away and then come back finish so you have a chance to finish them. Take 0 is our base joint. We want everything to happen from this root. So you take joint 1, place it under the 0, take joint 2, make it a child of joint 1, take 3, make it a child of joint 2, and you can see our joints are starting to appear now. Take 4, make it a child of 3, take 5, make it a child of 4, take 6, make it a child of 5, and so on. So I'm going to cut away here and come back. So when you're finished, this is what your joints should all look like. Each one should be placed as a child of the other. And then if we go into the viewport, you can see that we now have all of our joints in there. I'm going to click away. You see all the joints are in there. So I'm just going to close that up. We want to keep that and pull our Step Effector out. And we can even let's throw a null into here, and we'll just call this build. And throw these in there. And then we'll just double click those. All right, so we still have our joints here, and we need to put those into this same null for our tentacle. And we can rename that tentacle, actually, just get rid of this other junk. Okay, so there's one other thing I want to do before we get too carried away here. And that is, I want to, hopefully you're using a mouse, because this is a lot easier if you're using a mouse. And I'm going to middle mouse click these joints. And the reason I'm doing that is I can select them all by holding down the little wheel on the middle of your mouse and just clicking that. And that works with any hierarchy. It'll work with this hierarchy. It will select anything under that null. If I do this, it will select everything under that null. And so I want to just select the joints. They're all selected. And I'm going to hold down. I don't think we have to hold down, but we're going to try here. We're going to go back to convert. And I want a null at every joint for now. And so I'm going to go down to up to character conversion, and we're going to convert to nulls. And okay, here's where if you hold shift and click that little window, okay, there, I'm sorry, it's a control. And so now we have a hierarchy of nulls, and we're not going to do anything with those just yet, okay, but we are going to use those later. So we've got our hierarchy of joints, and we have our tentacle, and we are set. So the reason I'm going to do this next part is because there are a lot of tutorials to show tentacles using a spline and animating the spline and all of that. The problem with those is, and because I looked at those before I had to build my octopus, and the problem with them is that by themselves, just as a tentacle by itself, it works great, you know. But if you want an entire octopus, you know, or some creature that has these tentacles and you want it to be one mesh, the spline thing won't work, okay? But the joints will. And so that's why we're going to do this next step. It doesn't have a whole lot to do with animating this tentacle, but it does have to do with if you actually want to be able to actually do something with this later, that you know that this can be done. So I'm going to turn on my grid a second because I want to see where we're at. And okay, and we are at the center. So I do want to build this with the tentacle out. Now right now it's built in facing forward. The top of the tentacle is in Z space. So we're going to rotate from this null. And so I'm going to hit R for rotate, and I'm going to hold down shift as soon as I start turning this to 90 degrees so it quantizes so I get exactly 90. Okay, and I'm just going overhead a little bit. And I know that, and we're only going to do 4 tentacles, and that's more than enough to illustrate this concept. And so here I'm going to grab this and start rotating and quantize, and maybe 40, you know, that's not bad. And rotate. So now we've got a tentacle laying there, and the reason I did 40 is because we're going to have one out this way, one out this way, one out this way. We could do 45, so let's just do it. Go in here and we'll just put a 45 into B, and so now each tentacle will be exactly 45 degrees.